We did it, Joe! Thank you to everyone who subscribed and watched. Because of you, we've crossed over 1,000 subscribers. Woo! That support honestly means the world, and it only makes me more excited to bring you even more juicy story times from our favorite place, the Appalachian Mountains, okay? Together, we're growing this channel step by step, and I can't wait to keep climbing with you all the way to the top, okay? Let's continue and let the creepiness begin. Bye.
Let's read some scary and true stories from the Appalachian Mountains. If you're new here, I'm Krista, and I just made this account where we talk about weird events, paranormal story times, and everything in between. So if you're interested in that genre of content, be sure to stick around. The first one is called I Live in the Heart of Appalachia, and this is easily the most terrifying story of one of my experiences. This story may be short, or it may be drawn out. I am recounting these events as I type, and it was honestly one of the most horrifying things I've ever experienced, and it brings me genuine stress to think about. This happened maybe 2 to 3 years ago. I live in southern West Virginia, and I have for my entire life. The woods and mountains surround every direction you look, and nighttime is a darkness that you can never dream of unless experienced. I was with a friend, I'll call him Mark. Mark was at my house one evening doing the usual things, watching UFC, playing Xbox, etc. It was extremely late when we finally got bored and decided to go for a walk on a nearby trail and smoke a joint. This is not a particularly long trail, but it is very dense in the woods that surround it, and it is easy to get freaked out when thinking of your surroundings. We finally get to about halfway into the trail, about 30 minutes in, where we stop, pack our joint, and stand on the trail to chill and talk. The forest is very alive tonight. There are always noises in the woods, but the amount of animal activity for the time was unsettling. At this point, it was probably past 1 a.m. This was strange and kind of eerie, but not alerting, as any sort of predatory animal in the area may cause a disturbance. We finish smoking and continue our walk when almost immediately the forest falls dead quiet. And as soon as the forest goes quiet, there's a voice. It almost sounds like a mocking humanoid voice, shaky and uncertain. Almost like an old children's toy, like the ones with the crackly speakers and robotic voice, if you know what I mean. This immediately sets us off. We bolt directly down the opposite length of the trail, but the sound does not gain distance. It doesn't get closer per se, but no matter how far we ran down the trail, this eerie voice remains the same volume, going over and over with no quieting or stopping. At this point, I'm convinced that we are in genuine danger, something I have felt very few times. Finally, after sprinting for who knows how long, we exit the trail, grasping for breath and almost at the verge of tears at how frightening this was. We begin to exit the trail, and about 5 minutes from the exit, there is a bone-shaking, heart-stopping, murderous scream from directly behind us. I know what a mountain lion sounds like. This was not an animal. This was not someone playing or watching a movie. This scream sent birds flying from nests and made my heart drop into my stomach. It was genuinely the most depraved and violent scream that I have ever heard. This is a true story that I've only told to maybe 3 people, all of whom seem to brush it off as false. I've never been a person to push for the existence of the paranormal or spiritual, but I genuinely believe I encountered something inhuman in those woods. Edit. I know I will receive questions such as what the voice was possibly saying, or to explain the area and what happened after. I genuinely cannot remember what the voice was saying, if anything intelligible. I don't know if I could understand it then, and I certainly can't recall understanding it after several years of blocking it out of my memory. All that I recall is that it was a fluctuating voice and pitch, shaking, almost like joining sounds together. After running from the scream at the end of the trail, we ran to the car, which was only about 5 more minutes from the trail, so we got there relatively fast from sprinting. And then someone commented on this story with their own account that's pretty similar. Oh wow, I feel this in my bones. My uncle, mom's brother, has had a farm in southeast West Virginia since the 70s, long before he came into this world. Mom is the oldest of 5, and my uncle built a bunch of houses on the farm so family could use it whenever. Some lived there, and other, like my family, visited often. My mom and older sister and I would go for weeks on end to spend time with family, and I always loved it because I have a ton of cousins and was the baby for a long time, so mostly I tagged along with my cousins and felt extremely safe, like it was my happy place. I don't really remember anything totally out of the ordinary when I was really little, other than I remember an imaginary friend whom I exclusively played with at the farm, nowhere else, and we moved extensively for Dad's job, so I've lived in many different places. What I remember after age 5 was suddenly being old enough to not have to have someone walk me to and from other houses, which I thought was so cool. So I used to explore. My uncle liked to bow hunt and had taken me a few times, not too far into the woods, so I was able to go back down on my own and find their little tree platforms they had built to hunt from. I thought they were little cool tree houses. Your story sounds a lot like the very last time I ever took off by myself into the woods without another family member with me. It was the winter. I wanted to be out in the snow and explore. So I found my way up the mountain. This is what I called it, but in fact it was probably just a massive hill, and into the trees. I couldn't find the spot I was looking for and got pretty frustrated with my 8-year-old self. So I sat down by a creek to catch my breath and figure out where I was. I couldn't have been sitting more than about 3 minutes when something let out a scream I could only describe as blood-curdling. I thought it was a fox most likely until I heard another voice crying, just weeping and wailing, and the sorrow was palpable. My cousins had always told scary stories about Appalachia, so I figured they had followed me into the woods and were trying to scare the pants off me for shits and giggles. I called out like, "Okay guys, this is not funny. Okay, I'm going home. Enough," and followed my footprints in the snow as fast as I could back to the farm. The screaming and crying didn't stop, stayed consistent as I moved, which really made me convinced it had to be my cousins. I don't think I heard words, just crying and screaming, but it wasn't pleasant. Made my way back to the main house and absolutely booked it, ran full tilt to get to the kitchen door. I remember getting through the door and slamming it behind me because I was a combo of terrified and annoyed that my cousins were pulling a prank on me. Well, wouldn't you know, every family member was accounted for in the living room/kitchen. The older male cousins and my uncles were in the kitchen putting their snow boots and coats on to come look for me. I had apparently been gone for several hours and they were worried. According to my mom, I was white-faced. My hands were covered in scratches through my mittens. I guess I must have fallen or something. They were so worried I had disappeared. I should add, I set off from my aunt's to walk to my uncle's and had decided to take a detour and didn't tell anyone. I was 8 and really didn't think about how that might be bad. Mom said I looked like I had seen a ghost. I asked if anyone had come out to the woods to look for me, and they said, "No, we've been looking at the different houses, and we were just about to come look for you because they had saw my footprints head into the woods." I told them about where I went and what I heard, and my uncle, whose property it was, said, "Oh shit, I think you probably ran into the witch." I'm over here thinking, oh, some crazy lady lives in the woods and I probably stumbled near her cottage. Nope. The witch was what they call the unknown entity that roamed the woods, screaming, crying, and mimicking people's voices, and just giving people a good old sense of doom and dread. No one had a straight answer about possible folklore or anything like that, but all my older cousins had their own experiences with similar happenings over the years. It scared the living daylights out of me, and while I've been back to the farm over the years, I can tell you I have never once set foot near the woods tree line, even as an adult. I was grateful my family didn't think I was crazy, but they said a general rule is not to be in the woods alone, so I listened. To my knowledge, nothing physical ever happened with anyone in this entity, more of a prankster than anything. But oof, the Appalachia has some wild stuff. I definitely remember some strange stuff happening during the week we had my aunt's funeral when I was 21, and random voices or red eyes or smoke apparitions on the wood's edge, but I never went to check them out after that one incident. I read through the comments because I feel like this is a pretty shared experience when it comes to spooky Appalachian stories, and somebody said that this seems like a straightforward Sasquatch encounter, which is interesting. The forest going quiet is kind of a telltale sign because Sasquatch are omnivores and every creature knows that they're on the hunt. And then they said the voice that you heard sounds similar to what has been described as samurai chatter in the Sierra sounds, so let's take a listen to that. Hell no. Hell no. I'm sorry. Imagine being in the woods in the dark and you're 8 and you're by yourself and you just hear that. Wrap it up. Absolutely not. Wrap it up. Anyways, stick around for part 2 because I'll probably do another video talking about the Appalachian Mountains. Let's read another true story from the Appalachian Mountains. If you're new here, I'm Krista, and on my account we talk about weird events, paranormal story times, and everything in between, so if you're interested in that genre of content, be sure to check my account out. This one's called I Had a Strange Encounter with Some Kind of Entity in the Appalachians. In February of this year, I went to Pigeon Forge, Tennessee with my family, and we stayed in this adorable little cabin on a golf course. Anyway, my parents, Nana, aunt and her daughter, my brother, his girlfriend, and his dad all went out to explore the woods and riding trails, and me, my sister, and my cousin all stayed at the cabin. About 30 minutes after they left, the 3 of us were playing Cards Against Humanity and laughing and joking about the cards we kept getting when we hear a knock at the front door. Now, it's important to note that we were all sitting in the dining room. The dining room had about 8 to 10 windows around the room, one of which was pointed directly at the door. The door is angled towards the dining room. When the knock had happened, I had actually just gotten up to check on some cookies I had in the oven, so I was at a point where I couldn't see the door, but they could. My sister was staring at the door, and my cousin was looking at me with such an unexplainable expression that kind of creeped me out. But I still set my mitts down and went to walk to the door. But about halfway there, my sister called me from the back door. Mind you, I can still see my sister at the dining room table, and whatever it was called me by my legal government first name. And my sister has not called me by my legal name since she was in the 3rd grade. When that happened, I was on high alert and realized I probably shouldn't open the door because, duh. So I just went and sat down and chose to ignore it. Now, the night before, I had called my older cousin to debrief about a situation with my ex. During this call, I was sitting in the metal glider on the porch where the hot tub is because it felt like I was suffocating inside. As I'm sitting there, I noticed that on the golf cart bridge down the hill from me, something is standing there, looking directly at me. Now, at the time, I chalked it up to being a man standing there because that's not unusual for me. But as I'm finishing up my conversation with my cousin, I get this overwhelming sense of dread and danger, and I can't tell where it's coming from. So I quietly got up and went inside and watched a movie. Funny enough, the day after the events of the first paragraph unfolded, which the first paragraph was all about the dining room and hearing someone that sounded like their sister, we went to an exotic car exhibit and an aquarium. Now, all was good there, nothing strange, but when we were driving through the mountains to get back to the cabin, that feeling of dread came back. It was so overwhelming, I was in physical pain from how heavy my chest felt. About 5 minutes into the unbearable pain and sense of dread driving me nuts, it stopped. It just went away. No lingering ache in my chest, no dread, nothing. My parents were looking at me like they thought I needed a hospital, and my brother's, at the time, girlfriend was leaning over the back seat to make sure that I was good and I didn't need anything. The whole thing was really weird and very disturbing. Can y'all help me figure out what this entity was? Because 4 months later, I'm still going absolutely insane over it. And then they added an update at the bottom that says, I found the house, but for privacy reasons, I'm not posting the address because I'm pretty sure it's no longer an Airbnb and it's now that person's house. So let's go through some of the replies on this story. The first one that has the most upvotes is someone basically saying to look up some different stories about Appalachia ghosts and tales, and you could probably find something pretty similar to what they experienced, what the OP experienced here in the Appalachian Mountains. And the OP actually responded and said, I know a bunch about the Appalachians, but I'm still unsure if this experience was a mimic, flesh pedestrian, or something else. I'm from North Florida, so of course I'm not too exposed to creatures as such, but I do have stories and experiences here in the forests. Though I'm not from the Appalachian area, my aunt is, and we used to always visit over the summers. That changed after there was a falling out in the family and she and her son's father divorced, but the mountains are so scary. I'm not sure whether or not mimics and flesh pedestrians are kind of in the same genre of creature, but if I were to guess, I'd probably say it was more likely a mimic demon, just because I know that they're supposed to be the ones who are specifically mimicking the looks and voice of someone that you love and know to try and lure you to danger. And that kind of sounds exactly what OP was saying, with them calling them to the back door, which is so scary, like the thought of that. So the OP actually followed up to another comment and said, this entity said their full government name, not just their legal first name. They said that their sister doesn't even know that the OP has 2 middle names, and apparently they used, I'm assuming, all 4 names, their first 2 middle names and their last name. Great, yeah. And they're saying what they did see on the phone that night with their cousin was very tall and lanky, and it just stood there and could have potentially been a different entity from the mimic that they encountered nights later, because apparently it didn't do anything and it just sat there and watched. Personally, I think it was likely a mimic, and then I think the creature in the woods standing there and looking at them was probably something different, but I'd be curious to see what you guys think.
Okay, guys, you're just gonna hang out in my kitchen floor with me tonight when we get into this story because I'm way too scared to tell this one on the porch. Genuinely, like, we're gonna jump straight into it, but this is one of the scariest ones that I have ever been sent, and I'm not blowing smoke up y'all's hind ends. Like, it really scared me, and I usually go in order with the stories that I share, but I've got to get this one off my chest. Like, if I'm gonna be sitting here scared, y'all are gonna be scared with me, okay? We are leaving this follower anonymous. She said that part of the reason for that is that this story is just so traumatizing for her, and it made her, like, emotional, like, tear up even just telling the story to me. After reading it, I understand why. So And just also a quick disclaimer, I believe her. I genuinely do. And I get a lot of story submissions. Some of them, maybe they're true, maybe they're not. But the conviction in which she told it, the way that she wrote it, like, I genuinely believe that she and her family had an experience that traumatized them and haunted them, and that it was not human. We're going to skip my typical intro. I'm Autumn in Appalachia. Send me your scary stories. Add me on Facebook, same handle. Let's call this follower Callie for the video. Callie lived she said, at the head of the holler in eastern Kentucky, and she lived on her grandma's property. Now, Callie, in a single wide trailer. Her grandma's house is about 2 football fields away from Callie's trailer. She can see her grandma's house from her trailer. Her dad used to live in that trailer, but her dad now, while he's still on the same property, is in a different house. He's in like a field beside Callie's trailer. So all 3 people like living on the same property. And she also, by the way, Callie had a younger brother. Okay, this is important for context. So one night, Callie is asleep in her bed. She has to be up at like 5 a.m. for work. And she said that the phone rings. It's a landline phone, looks at the caller ID, and it's her grandma's name. And it's like 3 in the morning. She knows something's wrong, so she picks up. She's like, "Hey, Grandma, is everything okay?" Her grandma's like, "Is your boyfriend home?" Callie's boyfriend works night shift, but he was not supposed to be home at like 3 in the morning. And she's like, "No, he's not home." And her grandma's like, "Well, there's somebody or something, a man, on your front porch." Callie's porch light is on. So her grandma is literally like from her house looking at Callie's trailer and can see somebody pacing back and forth on the porch. And it's like right in front of the door. And Callie said that her grandma liked to kind of like spook and scare her, but never usually at like 3 in the morning via phone call, right? She's still, though, like, Callie has to be up for work at like 5 a.m. She's half asleep, like super groggy. She really thinks her grandma's just screwing with her. She's like, "Grandma, like, I've got to get in bed. Like, now is not the time for a joke." Grandma's like, "No, I'm serious." And Callie just hangs the phone up while her grandma is like trying to convince her that there is actually somebody or something on her front porch, like walking around. And so she hangs the phone up, she dozes back off, and as she dozes off, she said that suddenly her entire bed just starts vibrating, like violently shaking. It's almost like the entire house is shaking, not just her bed. And she said it froze her. She is like so petrified that she literally cannot breathe. She can't move her body. Her phone starts ringing again. It's her grandma. She picks up, and her grandma is now like, "Your porch light is like flickering and doing all kinds of weird stuff." Callie then hears her brother in the background of the phone call. Like, her brother and her dad are both at the grandma's house. And her brother's like screaming in the background, like, "There it is. I see it too, Grandma. Like, I see it too." Then she hears her dad pipe in being like, Mom, like, I cannot get back out there. Like, something is after me, and it is on its way over to Callie's house." And so at this point, Callie is like beside herself. She is like petrified, and she's like, "Guys, what in the actual hell is going on?" So she actually breaks down crying because she's that petrified, and she hollers at her dad through the phone and says, "Please, like, walk over here and come get me." Her dad, who is normally not scared of anything, she said, tells her, like, I'm sorry, like, I am too scared to come outside. Like, I'm too scared to come outside. She's like, "You are my dad. Like, I need you to get over here and, like, come get me." And he's like, "Okay, I'm coming." And she's like, "Please knock on the door and tell me it is you before I get out of my bed." A minute or two goes by, and she hears pew-pews in the air. It's her dad, of course, like, pew-pewing in the air to try to like scare whoever this is off. And then she hears his voice at the door, and he's like, "Cal, it's me, open the door." She opens the door up, and her dad is standing there frozen in place, and he is staring at the field beside Callie's house, and he is repeating over and over, "Do you see that too? Please tell me you see that too." Callie's like, "I refuse. I am not looking. I'm rebuking it in God's name." Like, she's trying so hard not to like let it get into her mind and like shake her up. But eventually her dad is like, "No, I need you to look, because I feel like I am insane, right? Like, I feel like I'm going crazy for seeing what I'm actually seeing right now." So against her better judgment, she lifts her head up, and at first she doesn't see it. but then her eyes lock with its eyes, and she said it is a picture she will never be able to get out of her head. About 15 yards away, directly in front of them, Callie sees something that is clearly not human, although it was standing on two legs like a man. She said that it was standing in a ditch line, the ditch line that separates her driveway from the field. This thing was about 7 or 8 foot tall. It had a long tail, a completely black body other than the face, which was a dark burnt orange color. It had yellow piercing eyes, and it had this like horn protruding from right above its forehead, like one single horn. She said this thing is just standing there, like intently staring straight at her and her dad. She sees this, and I'm getting like chills saying this, y'all. She is so shocked. She feels like she can't even breathe. And she slaps her dad's side and is like, get in the house. So they go in the house. Grandma's house is out the window now. They're not going out there. They close and lock the door behind them. So they stay awake for the rest of the night in Callie's trailer, and every time that they look out the window, that thing, whatever it was still outside in that ditch line. It never came back onto the porch, never walked across the driveway. It stayed in the ditch line staring at the house, almost like it was waiting on them to come back outside. Callie said that it is, to this day, the most terrifying thing she or any of her family members that all saw it too had ever seen. She said that this thing stayed there until the sun came up, and that even after it left, nobody in that holler slept for the next few weeks. They don't know what it was. They don't know how to explain it. Something else that haunts her is that her dad, who lived in that field, had like a very tiny home. When he went back to his house from the inside was destroyed. She said all of his belongings were scattered, things were broken, like it had been like ransacked. And they have to believe that whatever this thing was, it did that to her dad's home. Not me being in a Kentucky holler telling y'all this story. It is terrifying. I've heard some crazy things, especially since beginning to tell your all's scary stories. I've never heard of anything like being described like that, like the burnt orange face, the yellow eyes, the horn. It sounds like demonic. It doesn't even just sound like some sort of a cryptid, like an Appalachian cryptid or something. I don't know what to think. I just know that it scares the ever-loving shit out of me. Y'all let me know what you think in the comments. Like I said, send me your spooky stories, and stay tuned for some more spooky stories.
I grew up around the Appalachian Mountains, and I don't know why I never thought to talk about these stories before now, but I'm gonna share them with you because they're fucking terrifying. Back in 2015, I moved into this house with my mom, my dad, my siblings, whatever. And when we first got there, it was like, you know, cute house, but I've always been very sensitive to like paranormal shit. So off the bat, I was like, I'm sensing something, like Will and Stranger Things. I'm like, my neck hair is raising. I loved being alone as a kid, so I would go downstairs. It was a huge basement, nice floor, whatever. I'd be going down there doing gymnastics and stuff. And one day, I was like, let me, record myself to see my form. Let me see if I can improve. I took a picture, and when I looked at the picture, there was this giant green dot next to me. And I'm like, ooh, maybe that's just like light flare, what the fuck. If I look at it more, there's a man's face when I zoomed into it. I was like, ooh, I need to go show my mother. So I went and showed her, and she was like kind of paranoid. She was like, maybe because it's a green light, it could just be one of our past loved ones just protecting us. Like, me and her are very spiritual people, so we weren't too scared of it, just more like, that's a very clear fucking face. Like, that's a little freaky. Time goes on, we start getting stuff moved in down there, and I'm getting chills talking about it. Every person that stayed down there was constantly seeing and hearing shit. At one point, my sister and her kids were living with us, and my niece comes to me one day, and she's like, Auntie, like, I keep hearing people calling my name down there. Like, what do you mean? And she's like, I hear people calling my name. I can hear them talking to me. I hear whispers down there, and no one else is hearing it. Mind you, she was like 5 or 6 at the time, so I'm just like, I know you're not lying. There's one time my mom had this picture of Joseph and Mary above this glass table on the wall, and the material of the painting, picture, it was very easy to shatter if you had dropped it. So she wakes up and it's laying in the middle of the floor. Now, mind you, her room was down in the basement, so if this thing had fallen, she would have heard it and woken up immediately. It was just laying in the middle of the floor, and she's like, okay, that's kind of really fucking weird. Like, what the fuck? So she puts it back up, and she goes to lay back down. This time, it flew off the fucking wall. And so we were just like, oh, fuck no. She just didn't put it back up. She moved the table like, Another time, I would hear voices coming from the vents leading to downstairs. I shit you not. I would get so scared just when it was too quiet because I'm like, I could hear voices coming from the basement and I sounded crazy saying that. There's one night, I'm getting really, really, really fucking scared. Like, I keep hearing shit, I keep feeling shit. Like, it started to get very tense. Like, it's not that it felt malicious, but it was starting to be very active and very present. So I asked her, can I come lay with her because I'm really fucking scared, I can't sleep. So she was like, yeah, lay down, whatever. So I'm laying there for a few minutes, and we would keep our pets in the basement, not like locked up, but like my cat, we would put her downstairs sometimes when we went to bed or when we left the house, just so that she wouldn't be up and scratching on the furniture or whatever. And so we kept her food bowls at the top of the steps so that we could just easily refill them. We hear one of the bowls fall all the way down the steps, and we're just like, okay, the cat's fucking messing with them. So then we heard the other bowl, we heard that one like be more forcefully thrown, and you could hear it hitting each individual step, and like you could hear it, like the bowl hit, and you like the sound when you drop a bowl, and it's like wah, 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 like that fucking sound. We wake up the next morning, the bowls are at the top of the steps. Nothing fell. They didn't move, but we know what the fuck we heard. Then there was one time I'm sitting in the kitchen, so I'm sitting there, enjoying myself, and I start getting like this really heavy feeling, and I was like, shit, maybe I smoked too much, like maybe I'm freaking myself out. And I'm looking out the window. Behind our house is nothing but trees and woods. It's fucking like 1 a.m. I don't know why I'm doing this to myself, looking out in the fucking woods, high as shit, right? In the reflection of the window, I see something standing behind me. Bitch, I turn around and I see like this 7-foot dark shadow dart down the steps. So I'm fucking terrified. And I just went to my room. I fucking cried. Mind you, I think I was like 17, 18, 19. I think I was like 18 when this happened. Started crying. I was so fucking scared. So it took me a few days and I finally talked about it. And when I'm talking about this, my other sister, she's looking at me and she's like, don't fuck around right now. Like, are you being serious? And I was like, yes, why? She was like, because the other day I was standing in the kitchen and I saw exactly what you're talking about run in the opposite direction, ran to like the kids' room. And so we're all just sitting there like, oh my God. Last one for now. Me and my girl were standing in the laundry room and I was doing my laundry and one of my pockets had chapstick in it. So I was like, shit, take this out, put it on the shelf, threw my pants in the washer. Now me and her just sitting here talking, we're not paying attention to that fuck ass chapstick. So it falls and we're just like, okay, whatever. Like it probably just rolled off. Like I probably just set it down too fast, didn't pay attention. I set it back up there. This shit flew across the goddamn room. Like in between, it flew. We ran up out that basement so fast. I have so many stories from so many fucking places, from my house, my friends' houses, jobs. If you want to know, please comment and I will continue this. Because again, I don't know why the fuck I've never talked about this before. Like I didn't think that anyone would care. But now I'm just like, I think that would be really interesting to talk about. So
if you grew up anywhere near the Appalachians, then you probably have heard the rule where you do not answer any voices that you hear outside at night. This is After the Fire Stories, where I tell scary stories after the fire has gone out. So grab your favorite snack, your emotional support drink, and settle in, because tonight's story is about someone who broke that rule exactly once. I've gone back and forth on whether to send this because people online make Appalachian stories sound weirdly corny sometimes, and I swear that's not what this is. I grew up in eastern Kentucky, not way out off the grid or anything, but rural enough that you knew your neighbors and you knew the woods behind your house better than the roads in town. My mama used to say all kinds of stuff about the mountains at night, and most of it I took as old people rules. Don't whistle after dark. Don't follow a voice if you can't see who it belongs to. If something calls your name from the tree line and it sounds almost right, go inside and lock the door. I thought it was just mountain folklore. When I was 19, my cousin and I were driving back from a bonfire at maybe 1 a.m. We weren't drunk. I want to be clear about that because that's always what people jump to first. We were tired though. It was one of those roads that cuts between old woods and a drop off on one side, no street lights, just your headlights and whatever your brain starts inventing in the dark. My cousin was driving. We had the windows cracked because this truck's AC sucked. And about halfway back, we both heard somebody yell my name from the woods on my side of the truck. Not scream, just call it like they knew me. It sounded enough like my brother that my first stupid thought was, why would he be out here? My cousin looked at me and said, was that Eli? And before I even answered, so I know I didn't imagine it, he heard the same thing. Then it said my name again, a little farther up the road this time, like whatever it was had moved without us hearing it move. My cousin rolled the window up immediately and said, don't say anything. That should have been enough. It should have. But I was 19 and trying to act tougher than I felt, so I said, just under my breath, who's there? The woods went dead silent. And I mean dead. No bugs, no tree frogs, nothing. You don't realize how loud the mountains are at night until all of it cuts out at once. My cousin stepped on the gas. I remember laughing a little because I was nervous, and right then, from directly behind the truck, like right on the tailgate, something yelled my name again. Not my brother's voice this time. Same cadence, same rhythm, but lower, rougher, almost wet sounding. And my cousin started praying out loud, which he does not do. He is not that guy. We got to my house and both sat there for a second before getting out, and the porch light was on, and I could see my mom asleep in her recliner through the living room window. Normal, safe, everything fine. I almost convinced myself right then that we just scared ourselves. Then my cousin grabbed my arm and pointed back at the truck. There were handprints all over the tailgate. Not muddy, not bloody, just darker than the paint, like somebody with cold hands had been slapping and dragging their palms all across it. They were too long, that's what I remember. The palms looked narrow and the fingers looked too long. And my mom said we probably brushed against wet branches. My cousin didn't even argue with her, he just left. And for the next week, I kept hearing somebody walking behind the house at night, slow and steady steps in the leaves. And my bedroom was on the back side facing the woods, and around 2 or 3 every morning, I'd wake up and hear something circle the house once, sometimes twice, never fast, like it was going slowly on purpose. It knew it had time. Then it started calling me. Always from the woods, always just beyond where I could see with the porch light. Sometimes it sounded like my brother, once it sounded like my mom, once it sounded exactly like my cousin, which made no sense because he was at college by then. And it never said anything except my name at first. I made the mistake one night of looking out. I didn't go outside, but I pulled the curtain back because I was so angry and just tired and wanted it to just be some idiot messing with me. There was a shape standing at the edge of the tree line, too tall, but not in a dramatic monster way, just tall enough that it felt wrong against the trees. I couldn't see a face. I could see shoulders and arms and the suggestion of a head probably, and I knew somehow it was looking right at me. Then, in my mother's voice, it said, "You already answered me." I moved out 2 months later. My mom still lives in that house and swears nothing like that ever happened to her, but she also nailed a little iron horseshoe over the back door after I left, and she had never done that before in her life. The part I've never gotten over is this. About a year later, my cousin finally admitted that when I first answered it from the truck, he heard something answer me back from his side too. It said, almost. Yeah, absolutely not. The second something in the woods starts using your voice, that's just, I'm done. So this has been After the Fire Stories. If you have any scary stories, then go ahead and send them in to me and I might read yours next.
Scary story time while I try to fix this cinnamon roll store-bought slime. Appalachian Mountain edition. Now that I'm living in North Carolina, I think it's only right that I make an Appalachian scary story time. I low-key want to do a comparison of how this slime feels versus homemade slime. Starting off good, Rachel and her friend Rebecca were... Whoa! This smells good. I just didn't expect it because it's a blue slime. It smells like butterscotch. Rachel and her friend Rebecca thought it would be a good idea to go on a trail in the middle of the Appalachian Mountains at nighttime. Keep in mind, they were natives. I'm not gonna lie. Why is this slime good? Okay. According to Rachel, they did not believe in the make-believe ghost stories that the Appalachian Mountain brings. So her and her friend thought it would be a good idea to go camping and stay all night to prove the stories right. This slime is really good for a store-bought slime. Anyways, back to the story again. If you know anything about the Appalachian Mountains, you don't want to be there in the nighttime. Sometimes you don't even want to be there at day. So it's about 7 something p.m. when they start, and it's already getting dark, and Rebecca don't really have a good feeling about this, but Rebecca's a follower and she's doing what her group leader is telling her to do. These girls knew nothing about camping, so they were gonna stay in this old house that was along the trail somewhere. All of their friends told them not to do it because the Appalachian Mountain, it could be a very dangerous trail even if you don't believe in ghosts and all that different types of stuff. Is it Appalachian or Appalachian? No. Now, they've been walking this trail for about 2 hours before Rachel starts to realize that they cannot find this abandoned shed house anywhere. And Rebecca is starting to freak out because now at this point they're lost. They have no idea where the crap they are, and they've been walking for like 2 hours freaking straight. I'm gonna add some more of this hologrammy. I hate the way it looks, but like it looks tea, and it looks tea. And this is good slime for store-bought. Like, watch. There we go. Now, people who live in the Appalachian Mountains for years say if you hear the forest suddenly go quiet, you don't hear any bugs or nothing, might as well say bye-bye, or you better hope that you can make it out alive. And that's exactly what happens to Rachel and Rebecca. Out of nowhere, they don't even hear crickets. Everything goes still. They can't hear anything but their own heartbeat. Do you know how creepy that is? Now I'm gonna compare this slime to my slime, and I low-key think this is the winner. Rebecca starts to scream out of nowhere, and Rachel is confused on what's going on with her, and this is where Rebecca starts to shake uncontrollably and falls on the ground. Keep in mind, at this point, it's like 12:30. They're in the middle of the forest, and it's pitch black out there. This is my homemade slime, and I'm gonna mix them. I don't know if I already said this, but this is where Rachel and Rebecca both start to hear whistling from all directions. Oh no. I don't know how many times I have to tell y'all shouldn't go hiking at nighttime, let alone hiking in haunted land. Like that's insane. Keep in mind, these girls went hiking without any type of hiking experience on a trail they've never even heard of before, looking for a shed that probably doesn't even exist in the middle of absolutely nowhere. Rebecca is the one that sent me the story, and she does express how like dumb that kind of was on their part. And while I was reading the story, like my grandma just said, I didn't think that this was gonna be them making it alive. So going on, Rebecca stops shaking uncontrollably, and Rebecca doesn't even remember doing that, but this is from Rachel's POV. Rachel stands completely still, and she sees a man standing in front of her with a broken neck and a blacked out face. When Rebecca comes to, she sees that man too. No, I would have just started praying. He wasn't moving, and they're still hearing whistling all around them. The forest is completely quiet. It's like you can hear a pin drop and echo throughout the entire forest. This is where they both get up and run. They just booked it. They didn't even know where they were running to, but by this time it's already like 1:30 because Rebecca was shaking on the floor for a minute, y'all. While they're running, they start to hear the forest, make sounds again. Crickets are chirping, not birds, but bugs are making noises. When they stop to catch their breath, 4 feet behind them, they see the man with the broken neck again. It's wraps. Actually, just taking me and yeah, I can't do that. Like they were literally running for a long time. They stopped to catch their breath, and he right behind them still. No, they decided that they were just gonna stay in one spot and pray until the sun came up. They're still hearing the whistling, but also they're starting to hear someone call their name. Yeah, no, I'm gone. Just take me at that point. You're torturing me. Y'all are not gonna believe this, but Rachel still did not believe what was happening to them was some type of supernatural phenomenon. I can't say the word. Don't make fun of me. Phenomenon. Phenomenon. No. Anyways, yeah. Phenomenon. Anyways, just skip past that. At this point, they're praying, saying prayers, and the sun is coming up, but they can still hear whistling and their names being called. They are running. At this point, they're not even on trail anymore. I can't even tell you, neither can Rebecca, tell you how they made it back to their car.
God and God alone. Newsflash, Rebecca and Rachel are no longer friends, and I'd hope not, because what? Oh, I forgot to add why they're no longer friends is because when they decided to stay in one spot, it was actually Rachel's idea. Rebecca wanted to keep going, but Rachel just insisted that Rebecca was being over dramatic, and what was happening to them was a big prank. All right, so Rachel, I should have left you, honestly. But this is my homemade slime that I decided to add in here. No, it was not a prank. Exactly whatever they were experiencing out there was real. And this is the store-bought slime. It turned into like a periwinkle thing because like all the bubbles, but it's kind of tea, y'all. It's kind of tea. And this is the little keychain thingy that goes with it, and that's also kind of tea. And I actually just love this, but I hate the smell because for some reason it smells like butterscotch instead of smelling like berry or something. But that's the end of the story. Bye. I'm actually gonna mix the rest of my pink slime with the other pink and blue slime because I'm bored and I have nothing better to do. And this is gonna turn out to look like a donut or a purple. So I know I was talking a lot in this video, y'all, but I'm a little rusty, so don't hate me. Grandma! Bye, y'all!
Anything? No, you didn't. What does that even mean?
So this is a story that I've actually wanted to tell for a very long time, and I went ahead and I reached out to someone to make sure that this was an okay story to share, and I got that permission, and so I'm going to share with you guys a story about this. The question that this gentleman is asking is, you know, when you're in the Appalachian Mountains, people often say, if you see or hear something, no, you didn't. There's a common belief that there's a lot of unexplained or maybe weird or strange or, you know, supernatural experiences that you experience when you're living or are going through the Appalachian Mountains. So the story I'm about to tell you guys is actually published in a actual book called The Grandfather Speaks, which was told by an elder, published by Interlink Books back in 1994. So the story goes is that a long time ago, the animals, the animal nations, and the people, they all lived together in great abundance. That so many animal nations existed that many of them don't even exist to today. And they lived in this great abundance. What is now the Appalachian Mountains or the Ohio River Valley. And one of these animals was called Wakwawi. And Wakwawi means stiff-legged bear. It was the biggest of all the animal nations. Had these stiff arms and kind of lumbered around, and it was covered in really thick and coarse hair and had hide that was thicker than any animal. And from its face came these horns. And these horns, they say, were sharp as spears. And Wakwawi was by nature a mean and destructive creature. That for a long time, Wakwawi had victimized a lot of the other animal nations. And so one day they got sick of Wakwawi and his violence, and they decided that they were going to come together and make war against Wakwawi. So all the animals, and again, even animals that don't even exist anymore, they came together, the birds and the deer and the unknown nations, they came together to make war with Wakwawi. And the fight began. The battle began with Wakwawi. And they fought for so long, and there was so much death that they said that the land was stained red, that the rivers ran red with blood from the battle, the great battle. And despite them trying their absolute best, the animal nations started to suffer great losses. Even the great bear, the bear who was the biggest and the strongest besides Wakwawi, they came to fight, but they got wounded and needed to be removed from the battlefield. The creator sat upon a rock watching his creation make war with one another, and called forth the humankind, told the human nation, the nation of man, that they must join the fight against Wakwawi to bring balance. And so the mankind, they joined the battle. But even though they joined the battle, Wakwawi still was coming out victorious. After a while, when enough had been enough, the Creator sat upon that flat rock on that hill, had lightning bolts, and started to throw them at Wakwari. Started throwing them and striking them down. One by one, they started to fall. They were running around and they were going crazy and still fighting with one another. That in this chaos, the Wakwabi was so big that it started to dig into the earth, and it started to knock things over, and it started to trample really hard through on the land. And that's what they say created the rolling hills of Appalachia. It's the pathways that Wakwabi would take when it would charge. And one by one, Wakwabi started to fall from Creator's bolts until there was one left. This last one was the biggest and the strongest, and it came and sort of the charge right at Creator. Creator, it took that lightning bolt and threw it down there, and it bounced off of his horns. His horns, he knocked the bolt out of the way. He kept charging, and finally he got hit and he got wounded by a lightning bolt. It was so hurt that it started to kind of drag itself, and it ran north. And when it ran, it drug itself across, and that's what they say created the Ohio River itself, was the indentation of it dragging itself as it ran away from the battle. And it was up in the north that they became prevalent, that they became a thing. But in the area now, they were gotten rid of in the Appalachia area. After everything was said and done, it was then realized that so many of these giants, so many of these creatures were killed. So many of these nations that used to exist, ceased to exist, they fought themselves to extinction, battling Wakwawi. That the blood soaked into the ground. And so when you go to like Kentucky and you go to some of the Appalachian areas, you'll notice that that ground has red clay. That red clay, they say, is the blood of those who died in that battle. And they say that the Wakwabi remains are still to be found, and that nations later, like generations later after the war, that mankind continued to use tools from the remains of Wakwabi. And when you see what the remains are of the Wakwabi, you will discover that they look like this. That is what they have called Wakwawi, and those horns that were coming out of his face were tusks, and the hair that it had was woolly, and that his stiff legs were that of an elephant, and that it was fought with all the animal nations and humankind. That great war was to fight against Mastodon. Before this time, the food was granted in the area. Food was given to the people and the nations within the Ohio River Valley and Appalachia. And one of those foods was the cranberry. But it is said that the cranberry was not originally red, but that it became red when it was drenched in blood from the great battle with Wakwawi. And to tie this all together with the original statement, which is why, Appalachia is kind of creepy. And from the words of the elder who was quoted in that book, I read you this. This is why the land now called Kentucky was called the dark and bloody ground, because of all the blood that spilled there. It became a common hunting ground for various tribes, as no one would set up a village there, being greatly afraid of the ghost of those slain giants. We as North American people, generally speaking, have a greater knowledge of the myths and legends that come from overseas. But we have a creation story here too. We have mythologies here too. And I hope that this one made you happy a little bit and maybe sparked some thought and imagination as to why things are the way they are and why they feel the way that they feel with the land that you are occupying and that you live on today. So have a good night.
So my house is haunted, and I've been wanting to get on here and talk about it, but I am so scared, y'all. It's terrifying. But today I was at the laundromat, and I ran into this elderly woman who was having a hard time getting around, so I offered to carry her stuff in for her. My daughter and I grabbed it, and I told her I'd be back. I had to run to the store, and when I came back to get the rest of my clothes, if she needed anything, I would help her. So I get back, I folded my laundry, I'm getting ready to go, and I introduce myself to her and say hello and ask her if she needs anything else. And she goes, "Do you live in the area?" And I was like, "Yeah, I live in so-and-so," which is about 10 minutes from there because I live in the country, so not everything's walking distance. And she goes, "Oh, I used to live there in the haunted mansion." Now, My house is very, very specific. If you said that and you were talking about this area, everybody would know which house it is. My house is the only one on the block that looks like this. And I want to talk about it so bad, but it gets mad when I talk about it. And I live right off the Appalachian Mountain. Like, the Appalachian Mountain is my backyard. I'm so, like, I want to share, and I think I'm going to now, because this is just so cool. This is crazy. That elderly woman told me she lived here twice. She rented from here twice. And in 1976 was the first time she rented from here, and it was haunted then. I think I'm going to start telling my story, because the fact that I even ran into her just tells me that the universe will always cross us where it's needed, for sure. This is going to be part 1 of my haunted house video in the Appalachians. Anyone who saw my original video and the sound cut out, this is the 3rd time I'm trying to post this. So I'm going to do it in my car, outside, away from my house. I'm in the Wawa parking lot. So, to start off, my fiance, my daughter, and I moved to Pennsylvania from Baltimore in 2021. It was a drastic shift. We enjoyed it. It's very peaceful out here, okay? The house we live in is an old Victorian home that's split up into apartments, and it was built in 1890. It has been here for a very long time. It's very old, no updates, okay? We were just gonna wing it out. When we first moved here, everything was fine, didn't notice anything crazy, okay? I started to notice, I did stay home from work because my health was not that great at the time. So my fiance worked, my daughter was at school. I was the only one that stayed in the house all day, okay? Now, I didn't notice anything too crazy. I started to get a lot of brain fog, some overstimulation. I thought I just chucked it out to be my health stuff, okay? Now, the first thing, this is not just about my haunted house. This also kind of blends into my life in a way, I believe it does. I don't know how many parts this is going to have. I'm just going to keep telling until I get to now, okay? So to start off, the first thing I noticed when I realized the house was haunted, my daughter and I were sitting in the living room, and my dog was sitting in front of us on the floor. My dog, oh my God, I can't, I'm sorry, I get the goosebumps every time I talk about this. My dog stood up on her back legs in the middle of the floor, like someone was trying to almost feed her a treat or try to pet her. But the thing that creeps me out was, usually if a dog jumps up on you, they're gonna like put their paws on your chest or your leg or something like that. My dog was trying to balance on her back feet like she knew that she couldn't lean. And this happened, and I don't mean like she was in the floor. Like when I say it was a foot away from me, whatever it was standing, I could almost touch it. It was terrifying, okay? So after that, I was like, okay, that's strange. The house is old, whatever. So as some time goes on, I'm just going to say this part. I have the ability to communicate with spirit. Whether you believe it or not, that's fine. I'm not doing the bean soup thing. Just go with the story, okay? I started to feel like someone was trying to communicate with me, and they kept showing me the letter M. And at that point, I knew that it wasn't someone outside that I knew. It was someone close by. My first thought was to ask my neighbor who lived in the row of houses that was behind us. My landlord owns my house, and there are townhouses behind. She manages the property for him. So, and she's been here for a while. So I decided to ask her, has anyone ever complained about the house being haunted? And she told me no, but I kind of got the vibe like maybe she was scared to tell me. So regardless of what she did or did not know, I knew something was going on, and I just continued on. So a few days go by, and she reaches back out to me and goes, I have to tell you something. And I was like, okay. And she was like, I kind of fibbed a little. And I was like, all right, what is it? And she was like, I just want to let you know that about 5 to 7 years ago, someone did delete themselves there. And I was like, really? And she was like, yes. And I said, can I ask you, did his name happen to be Michael? Because at this point, I had already figured out it was something like that. And the moment she told me that, it was like I knew his name. And she told me his name was Michael. So as some time went on, I was like, okay, so I know what's going on here now. Okay. So a few days goes by, I'm doing some research. This is all within like a week's time. I'm doing some research, and she ends up sending me this photo of his obituary. And she was like, I found his obituary and I read up on it. The kid he was only 19 years old. So I was just very confused by it. When I looked at the obituary, when she sent it to me, the day of his death was 3 days away. That also lets me know that there is something that he is asking for from me, because there's no way that this is happening at this time this way. So my first thought when she sent me that, like right now I'm getting goosebumps. My first thought when she sent me that was, do you think he did it, or did the house make him do it? And at this point, there was not a whole lot of creepy stuff going on. It was just me feeling him. But something in me told me to ask her that. And she said to me, she said, I think that could be a possibility, but I also think the neighbors could have done it. So I asked her to explain. She said the young boy that was 19 years old, he was only in that house visiting his aunt and uncle. He didn't live there. So for me, logically thinking, I'm like, why would someone go to their aunt's house and do that? I know that is a very sensitive topic, and I understand that it's very unpredictable, but I'm just tuning into the energy and it's not making sense to me. It really isn't. When I asked her how all of that went, she said, I think either the house did it or it was the upstairs neighbors. Now, at the time that he was here, the upstairs neighbors, she said, were not very good people. And the night prior to him doing this, supposedly, he was hanging out with them, carrying on, drinking, doing all kinds of stuff, which he shouldn't have been doing because he was only 19. And the next day, they found him in the basement from the beams. That definitely kicked me into gear. I'll just say that, because now I know that I'm not crazy. So I believe in God, spirits, all of that. So what I did was I walked around the house and I prayed and I let him know that he could go. I opened all the windows and all of the doors. Okay. I let him know that it was safe. He didn't have to be here anymore. He was allowed to leave. When I came downstairs, I'm getting goosebumps again. When I came downstairs, my front porch has a sensor light. Okay. It only goes on or off when you're on the porch. When I came downstairs, the sensor light on my porch was on. And I was the only one home when I did that. Everybody else wasn't there. And that just told me, I just felt like he left. And I have not felt him since then. Now, after this, things calmed down a little bit. But then they got weird. I'm going to stop this part here so that I can get to the next part. I'm going to post the next part later today after I get off of work. I hope this loads right. Please be patient with me, guys. I'm new to talking on TikTok, and I wasn't expecting so many people to be interested in me, okay? I'm new to being on TikTok. Please be patient. This is going to be part 2 of my haunted house in the Appalachian Mountains. First, I just want to say, please excuse my appearance. I am pooped. I've had a very long day. Now, we left off in part 1 where I said that I found out about the young gentleman in the home. You can go back and watch that part. Now, things calmed down a little bit after, and then they got weird again. So me, as I said in part 1, I'm more spiritually inclined. So when it comes to certain things, I don't get spooked easy. So some things that would usually spook other people, I would just be like, oh, okay. Now, I started to notice that my daughter would keep coming out of her room and going, yeah, did you call me? Yeah, did you call me? And it started to happen so much, I was like, do I need to go get this girl's hearing checked? You know what I mean? It started to get concerning. I've kind of brushed it off. And then my fiance, now, he had the ability to also communicate with things, just not as aware, but he was still sensitive to it. He told me that he kept hearing whistling when he would go out in the morning to go to work. Now, when he goes out, he would go out at like 4 a.m. So it's still dark outside. And at first he didn't tell me. I think he was just a little creeped out by it. But then he started to tell me that he saw this man standing in the hallway. And I looked at him and I was like, what are you talking about? And he was like, he just stands there when I get up in the morning, and he's just standing at the bottom of the steps all the time. And I was like, okay, this is new to me, because at this point, I don't really see things with my eyes. I hear things, I feel things, but I never really see anything manifest in front of me. This went on for some time, and we kind of just brushed it off. I was like, the whistling. And at this point, I didn't know nothing about the Appalachian Mountains. I didn't know a jack shit, okay? I just want to point that out. And actually, after he started telling me these things, it started popping up on my TikTok. And I was like, what the fuck is this? You know what I mean? As some time goes by, I start noticing that everyone in the house is starting to get more irritable, more agitated. We're all just not doing well. So we're spending a lot of time on our phones. Like, it was almost like we were just trying to quiet out the noise unknowingly. Also, I'm not going to tell this in a timeline order. I kind of have to batch it together where it goes, or it's going to be a chaotic mess. Now that I'm on Appalachian TikTok and I'm noticing these things, I figure out I don't even want to say it. I'm just going to put it on the screen. I figure out what they are, and I start to realize that something ain't right here, okay? It started to feel like the house thrived off of chaos and dysfunction. There's like no energy space. There's no space to store anything. And the house was just so cluttered with the stuff we came with. And it felt like even the portion of my apartment, no matter what I tried to do, the house even now, still to this day, it sucks in there, okay? And I'm working on getting out. But at this point, I had established that we had one of those things in our house. And I started to feel other spirits around, and it started to become a lot. I knew that it was separate, but this one thing that loved the chaos didn't feel like a person. It does not feel like it's an old soul just wandering around. It feels chaotic, and I don't know what it was. As some time goes on, there's a whole bunch of other stuff going on, but this is what solidified that we had one of these things, okay? My fiance usually gets up in the morning, he would kiss me goodbye, and he would leave. I never got out of the bed. I would say goodbye to him, and I would just roll back over and go to sleep until I had to get up to wake my daughter up. This specific day, I just happened to wake up with him, and I sat up in the bed and like out of my sleep, and I spoke to him for a few minutes, and he walks out of the room, and I hear this voice that sounds like a woman. But if you were to see, I'm getting goosebumps again. Jesus Christ. It sounds like a woman's voice, but almost like if you were muffled through a radio or through like a wall, like you could hear someone talking. Okay. I heard that with my own ears. And then I was like, I wonder what that was. I rolled over and put my head back down. My fiance only made it halfway down the steps, and he goes, yeah. And I was like, wait a minute, he heard that too. He heard what I heard. And I was like, wait a minute, did you just hear that? And he was like, yeah, you called me. I said, I didn't call you, but I heard whatever that was. Let me tell you something. I never heard my fiance move that fast in my life. The amount of time it took him to get down the rest of the steps and out the front door, I'm not going to lie. As freaky as it was, I giggled my ass off because it was funny. He told me later when he called me and let me know what was going on, he told me that he heard my voice call his name. Now, when I heard the voice, I couldn't make out anything that it was saying, which is even weirder. I just heard the voice like it was trying to get someone's attention, but I didn't hear any words. It was the craziest. I got chills on my neck. It was the craziest shit ever. So at this point, now I know. I was like, this is why my daughter keeps thinking that I'm calling her name. This is why, because it's whatever that is. Okay? I'm going to stop here and I'm going to make the next part, because the next part kind of plays into some of my ancestry that I've researched, and that gets even crazier.
Hey y'all, thank you so much again for getting us to 1,000 subscribers. And I'm so excited to continue to grow Scooping for Scandal and hopefully get us to 10,000 subscribers next. Hey, why not? So continue to like, comment, share, and click that subscribe button. Have a great day, y'all. Bye.